You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I'm your host, Cathy Biase, and I'm an holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. Today on the Health Hub, we are talking about a greatly overlooked determinant of health, and that's your home. We obsess over food and supplements, exercise and sleep. But what if the very walls around you are either supporting your biology or silently stressing it out? My guest today is Paul Kealey, founder and president of EkoBuilt and the architect of the house's medicine system. For nearly 2 decades, he has been pioneering the design and construction of low-energy passive homes and net zero homes that don't just save energy, they actively improve air quality, reduce mold risk, stabilize temperature, calm the nervous system, and support long-term health. You know, we spend up to about 90% of our lives indoors. So think about the impact on our health if the home that we live in could reduce inflammation, improve our sleep, and even prevent chronic illness. When we come back, we will explore all of this with Paul.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. Please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, X, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on those locations. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cathy. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be on here.
Well, such an interesting line of work that you are involved in, and it really does align quite nicely with what we're trying to do here on the Health Hub. We talk about things like inflammation and all this other stuff, but we never realize, what can be, impacting us with the space we live in. Getting right into it, house is medicine. What does that actually mean?
So house's medicine is ultimately about creating an intentional environment to live in.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think of the home shouldn't be thought of a neutral dwelling that is automatically there to protect our health. There's big problems with the building code that we've become educated on the past number of years, decades even, in the high performance world, with the realization that building codes aren't there to protect our health. They're there to protect a house from falling on our head, but essentially designed, or building codes stipulate, unhealthy buildings unless they are built by a home builder that understands building science, understands how to create a healthy home. There's a lot of problems associated with typical homes. We've seen a number of studies come out that have communicated new homes as little as 2 years old. 25% of new homes have some type of mold developing in the home within the first couple of years of occupancy. So sometimes we think, if we don't feel right in our house, it's the home, and go out and buy a new house, and that new house should automatically feel different. And unfortunately, that is not the case. Now, building codes are starting to evolve, so it's a good conversation. It's a positive conversation, and hopefully I can provide a lot of value to people who really understand those impacts that the health is potentially taking away from an optimally healthy environment.
Well, at what point did you realize that buildings were directly affecting people's health? We've had someone on the show that talks about mold, but it goes beyond that, doesn't it?
It goes beyond that. The volatile organic compounds, high humidity, low humidity, cold surfaces and drafts are another
Mhm.
health implicator, and basic noise, dust, allergens in the home. A home really needs to have optimal indoor air quality. Unfortunately, we can't have optimal indoor air quality from a house perspective unless it's built right. Ultimately, houses, this goes back to the code, are designed to be built vapor closed. So homes that hold moisture rather than dissipate the moisture, what a home is supposed to do. And whenever we have humidity, whenever we have moisture in a building envelope system, regardless of the type of material that a home is built with, homes are not designed from a building code perspective to be vapor open. And this is the one single biggest problem with the homes. Homes that hold moisture are inevitably going to lead to some type of mold growth. And ironically, the new homes promote mold growth. The only existing homes that don't have mold in them, from a percentage base, would be the older homes. The old farmhouse down the street has as much better indoor air quality, believe it or not, than most new homes. And that's because the older homes are very leaky. And where you have a very leaky building envelope, there's a lot of energy to dry out the wall systems, the roof systems. And that energy will keep the humidity out of the wall. But at the same time, the old farmhouse, you do not want to live in this type of house either from an affordability standpoint, because energy, as we all know, being in any home, has really increased 300 to 400% over the past 10 to 15 years. But knowing there's a right way to build, sometimes people are in existing homes, don't want to leave their neighborhood. Homes can also be retrofitted to be healthy as well. There is a type of house that our company came across when we were in the transition zone to creating the most healthy home, the most sustainable home, call it a house that protects our health and also protects the health of our world. When we stumbled across a type of home called a passive house and learned that it's the only construction model in the world that exists to both protect our health and to protect affordable operation well into the future. Really, that's where our research stopped. And now most of our, well, I shouldn't say stop, we're always researching and developing, but now our research and development is concentrated on making a passive home as affordable as possible so that anyone with a reasonable budget can afford to build one.
When you talk about the structure of a home is in the building codes are meant so that the house doesn't fall down or the structure doesn't fall down. Um, when we talk about building codes, what about the materials that the building codes are allowing for homes, and how do they impact the breathable house? I mean, I know there are little air pockets and little places in the bricks on the side of the house that are supposed to allow for ventilation and so forth, and I'm sure the kitchen has its own building code for its breathability and getting chemicals out of there. But what about the actual building products for the walls and things like that? Yeah, that would one would promote more of a holding of mold, less circulation. How do we tackle those issues when we come to build a house of our own, let's say?
Good question. So, and to dive into this question, I guess from a general perspective, because houses are built with a wide range of materials, engineered materials are becoming more and more common. When I think about materials from a green material perspective, we would want materials to be as high as possible renewable resource content and as high as possible recycled content. But all building systems will naturally hold moisture unless the system has a proper vapor open membrane. So
Okay.
this material, whatever material is used to keep a building system vapor open is the key. Now, vapor open building systems are essentially a membrane that allows the home to dry. And that drying could either happen towards the outside of the home, which is frequent in areas that experience winter. So in heating predominant climates, vapor open membranes will go on to the outside of the home. And alternative to that, in more southern climates, climates closer to the equator, vapor open membranes should be placed on the inside of the home. And ultimately, that's for reasons of high humidity in environments that are closer to the equator year round. So wherever there's high humidity, we want to make sure that humidity is blocked outside the home, doesn't have a chance of mitigating into the building envelope. But it is important to recognize at the same time, any building system, any material has a lot of moisture in it when the home is built. So being vapor open to allow this construction moisture, call it, to dry is number one. Even though an airtight home is a big part of keeping a house healthy, so that excess moisture isn't mitigating into the building envelope, and that unhealthy air potentially outside the home isn't mitigating inside as well from a toxin perspective. Air tightness, a big part of the game here, but we need to keep in mind that there is a residual amount of air leakage involved in any type of house, even a passive house. The world's most energy efficient construction model isn't 100% airtight. So we need to have a way to dissipate this moisture. A vapor open membrane could be a wood-based material, or it could be more of a house wrap material, but a material that is designed to allow moisture to escape without compromising the airtightness qualities of the home, essentially.
We can't accommodate the humidity aspect with just our dehumidifiers and things like that that are being placed in the house. Bigger, stronger, better. That doesn't do the trick.
It doesn't do the trick from an intentional point of view, meaning being in an environment that is ultimately able to take care of itself. So bringing in humidifiers, dehumidifiers is obviously the case with a lot of homes. That I would say as a last resort, better to build the home in a way where it can manage the humidity itself. And the air tightness is a big part here. But humidity in general is a big part of the health conversation. We might not think superficially that dry environment or a humid environment is going to affect our health. It might affect our comfort from a sensibility point of view, but not our health. But it has big health implications. When there's low humidity, for example, and this would be under 30 to 35% humidity, sinuses are known to dry and crack, airways become inflamed, viruses survive a lot longer, and immune system response weakens. And dry humidity is a situation most conventional homes, let's say that are heated with a furnace, would be in continuously over the course of a winter without a humidifier as part of the equation. So essentially, furnace systems take drier outside air, meaning cold air, even if that cold air coming into the home is the same humidity quotient as indoor air, warmer air. When you take that cold air and heat it up, the air instantly becomes a lot drier due to thermal expansion. So we want to control against that. High humidity, on the other hand, when indoor humidity rises above 60%, dust mites are known to thrive, mold spores multiply, and bacteria will colonize. And chronic exposure to mold and allergens ultimately creates a low-grade systemic inflammation, which is one of the core drivers of accelerated aging, metabolic dysfunction, and cognitive decline. So we're getting into the science here.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, important for people to understand that a new home, you can build your home in a way where it will always maintain a comfortable humidity range. And that would be between 35 to 40%, right up to 60%. And that is essentially done with a house built with a proper vapor open membrane system, also built airtight and built with a ventilation system, which I refer to as a fresh air machine, essentially in the HVAC world, referred to as either an HRV, meaning heat recovery ventilator, or ERV, energy recovery ventilator. But the ERVs are the ones to put into your home because they're the ones that are able to manage humidity. So when the stale air is being exhausted to the outside and a heat recovery transfer is transferring the heat energy from stale air to incoming cold air. This is a machine that will also keep humidity inside the home in the wintertime when dry environments are more prevalent, and keep humidity outside the home when more humid environments are happening during the summertime months, for example.
It's a constant interplay at this house to try and keep the humidity and the control it during the summer and the winter. And the other thing is the temperature. We haven't really talked too much about the temperature of the air. Is that impactful on our health?
Yes, temperature and ultimately cold drafts, surfaces have a big part to play with health as well. Ultimately, drafts, when we think of a draft, it's similar to humidity, not just a comfort issue. It's a respiratory event happening over and over again, day after day. And cold air hitting the airway causes tightening of our air passages. It increases inflammation in sinuses and lungs, and it irritates the immune system. Chronic sinus pressure and cough is prevalent in homes that have a lot of drafts and cold surfaces. And ultimately, this subtle stress signal triggers the sympathetic nervous system. And a drafty home is going to force the body into a constant state of micro adjustments. Ultimately, a body that can't stay relaxed. Cortisol levels increase, and just our bodies need to be in a state of relaxation to allow our immune system to be most productive when we need it. Our immune system shouldn't be there to protect ourselves in the environment we spend 90% of our day in. Most when we think about sleep, we're sleeping for a third of our lives, 35 to 40%, and we're indoors more often in northern climates and southern climates. But regardless of climate zone, we're inside 85 to 95% of the time. So being in an environment where our bodies aren't constantly stressed is ultimately what this house is medicine conversation is all
Mhm.
about.
Well, our house in particular, we've got over the garage is a freezing room, and then it kind of goes down, freezing in the winter and deathly hot in the summer. I feel my bedroom never heats up to the temperature that the thermostat is on our main level. Um, Tell me, is the temperature, say we set it, well, we're Celsius. So if we set it at 20 in the winter and we keep it through that same temperature in the summer, does that mean the same thing, or is a temperature adjustment something that is beneficial through the changing seasons?
Yeah, there is a different temperature. I target temperature and
Okay.
humidity comes into play here as well in terms of what feels comfortable in the home. But you're right, 21 to 22 degrees would be that comfort level in the wintertime. And in the summertime, summer sensible comfort is known to be closer to 25 degrees. But with respect to humidity, it is better if humidity is at the higher range in the winter. 20 to 21 degrees will feel, or 21 to 22 will feel more comfortable. with a slightly higher humidity, not going into the high range, of course. And alternative to that, in the summertime, 25 degrees is going to feel comfortable if the humidity is a little bit lower, in between the 40 to 45% range. So this really helps with keeping the house at a temperature where you're using your heating system or your cooling system as little as possible. If it's 25 degrees inside the home at a lower humidity, you're going to be very comfortable. And as opposed to that, the house could be kept a little bit cooler in the wintertime, as long as the humidity is a little bit higher, into the 55 to 60% zone.
So, like we at our house, we have to manipulate that humidity, right? With our humidifier and dehumidifier. When you're talking about the house's medicine and the healthy home, is this is something that's supposed to be happening just within the confines of the house, like not a manipulation that the house will itself regulate?
Well, the house, so being, ultimately it all comes back to being in an environment that's easy to control. So from an energy efficiency point of view, or a heating and cooling point of view, a passive home, so I mentioned earlier, the type of house that is ultimately going to revolutionize the home building world. In as little as 5 to 10 years, it's possible that every building code in North America will be passive house based. So we're talking about a house it's a construction model, so not a passive solar home where a house is just simply oriented towards the south, where most of the windows are placed. We're talking about a house that's built essentially like a thermos. So an airtight building envelope, a proper thermal envelope with continuous insulation to remove any possibility of condensation or cold surfaces, high performance windows and doors that let the heat energy into the home during the winter time, but block the heat, block that direct sunlight through reflection in the summertime months. A house that has high heat recovery ventilation. So being in an airtight home, a house that's always going to provide a highly oxygenated environment with very little energy input. For example, the proper efficiency when it comes to a fresh air machine can essentially exhaust stale air from the home in the winter at 21 to 22 degrees. And as it transfers 90% of that heat energy to the incoming the cold air coming out of the fresh air vents inside the home isn't cold anymore. It's almost 17 to 18 degrees Celsius when it comes into the home. And it's ultimately at a temperature where your body doesn't sense the difference. But going back to your question, with respect to heating and cooling, stable temperature, building a home like a thermos requires very little energy inputs for both heating season and cooling season. And we're talking, I think the best way people can appreciate the efficiency of a building is talking about how much cost it takes to operate. So using an air source heat pump, or any heat pump for the matter of fact, will cost as little as $250 to $300 a year, Canadian dollars, American dollars. It all comes down to the cost of kilowatt hour from your local electrical company, but less than $250 to $300 a year for all heating and cooling purposes. So very little heat needs to be kept inside the home for maintaining optimal temperature is the result.
Interesting. Okay, let's take a break, everybody, and we'll come back and continue this discussion.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Cathy Biase.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. My guest is Paul Kealey, and we are going to continue our conversation about healthy homes and hopefully bring up a lot of topics that may not have been forefront in your mind. Probably the last, I don't know if it is the last two things, but the two main things that I wanted to to address when speaking with you, Paul, is about the noise of a house and the lighting of a house. Now, with noise specifically, we get those little hums or we get and they can drive people insane and you don't know where they're coming from and they can come from any avenue in any area of the house. But when you are looking to build a house, how do you address noise? And then after that, how do you address the lighting aspect of housing?
Thanks for asking. Noise is one of those silent items that we don't think about. I guess noise could be silent or is silent or excessive, but silence is the result in a house that's properly built with an airtight thermal enclosure. And it's interesting when I think of noise. We've built houses for musicians that needed a studio space, acoustically protected studio space integrated within the home. And the passive house that we're talking about is that natural space that keeps outside noise outside and built with the right form of insulation. We always recommend using a dense packed cellulose type of insulation, which at the same time can absorb a lot of the noise inside the home, so you don't get that echo effect.
For
But
the low grade
uh,
hum.
yeah, that low grade hum and interestingly enough too is passive houses are becoming real popular in New York City for the result of keeping the noise outside. But noise at excessive levels can be very chronic to the body, can increase cortisol, increase blood pressure also, prevents deep sleep. Anyone that's part of the longevity conversation and just simply antioxidants for our body knows that our brain only has one chance to detoxify itself, and that's during deep sleep when our glymphatic system is instigated. And noise is a big problem here, preventing people getting into deep sleep or as much deep sleep as you need to detox. It reduces the REM sleep as well, raises nighttime heart rate when your heart rate is supposed to be as low as possible, and creates fatigue the next day. A lot of time people will wake up after a full night's sleep, but still feel groggy. And that can be the result of noise, whether it's excess outside or that constant low grade hum that you mentioned, Cathy, from mechanical systems
Hmm.
constantly operating. The passive house, again, building your home like a thermos would essentially allow anyone the opportunity to shut off, close down any heating or cooling system at night. There's only going to be a 1 to 3 temperature difference from nighttime to morning, 8 to 10 hours later. So, when we think about longevity and sleep, sleep quality is ultimately one of the strongest predictors of lifespan. It's a big deal. When we think about sleeping, again, we spend a third of our lives in our bedrooms. If our bedrooms aren't optimized for air quality, meaning keeping carbon dioxide low, maximizing the oxygen level, it's known that most bedrooms in North America will range somewhere between 1,200 to 2,000 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the bedrooms. The Harvard Healthy Buildings Institute did this study. And to put that into perspective, outside air is approximately 400 parts per million CO2. So putting in a fresh air system, if you don't already have one, with a constant fresh air supply to the bedroom is a big deal. And but noise is chronic and definitely part of the conversation. I know you asked too, Cathy, about lights.
Hmm.
So important to design our homes in a way where the lights don't need to be on if it's sunny outside or if it's simply daytime outside. Even windows on the north side of the home will let in a lot of natural daylight. So windows sized properly and strategically placed around the home so that every room has the ability to be lit with natural daylight, as lights need should be off during the daytime for sure.
And what about the type of lighting? We had many years ago, we had a great guest on the show and we talked about the impact of lighting on health within the hospital space. So within the healthy home, do we need to consider the type of lighting that we're putting up?
Well, I think what we want to be aware we want to be aware that light the wrong type of light could be a form of potential stress and feeling if the lights so there's many different types of lights. Even the LED lights have a number of different frequencies, wavelengths that you can pick up at the store, and some are going to be affected more with one version of light than others. We're all different, and I think the right light is really a personal choice. But being aware it can be a source of stress, and if you feel the vibration, call it from just not being not understanding what it truly is. It's a good it's there's a good thing that it could be coming from the lights itself.
With a lot of us in lockdown during COVID, we spent a lot of time in our home. You have any stories about how people came to realize the impact of their home environment on their health?
Yes, with the pandemic was very interesting. The business was was stopped at certain points. It wasn't an enjoyable time to be in business, that's for sure, with building municipalities not issuing building permits. But we had a lot of interesting conversations, and a lot of customers came on board during the pandemic because of people spending more time in their houses. There's one story in particular, a customer of ours, her name was Priya, and she was a high school teacher. Schools were shut down, and she was naturally spending a lot more time inside her home like everyone else. And she ended up getting a lot of mild headaches happening. And the reason she dawned on this is she she naturally felt better every time she was outside the home, whether she took her dog on a walk or went to the store. She felt a lot better outside the home than it's inside the home. So she attributed her health problem to the house, to air quality. And that led her on the research of figuring out what could be the problems there, and what is a healthy home? How do you build a healthy home? And her and her family have been talking about the dream of building their own house for a number of years, and really that's what caused them to get it done. And I think this is a story, that a lot of people can relate to. And in the health world, we focus a lot on supplements, on biohacks, on exercise, and food in general, and eating certain foods that contain high levels of antioxidants. But we forget about air quality and the environment that we spend 90% of our lives in. There's nothing that will allow us to optimize our health unless we're in an environment where we can control. And that's what this conversation is about, and people need to be aware of it.
Um, Going back to the passive house and building, is the building of this type of house expensive? I understand the operational part is very inexpensive. You mentioned that, but the actual building of a home like this, is it generally more expensive than our average house?
It is a little bit more costly to build. Yes, more materials are going into the home, more insulation, but the upgrade to the home is only segregated to a certain part of the home. We call it the weather tight shell envelope. So overall cost of the home isn't significant if the home is designed right. So our company is we have a big picture vision of anyone being able to afford a passive house in all of North America. So affordability is one of our main drivers. And in our experience, if we can limit the incremental cost of a passive house to 10%, we're not going to affect anyone's cost of living. So if someone moves from a house heated with natural gas into a passive home, and that house costs an additional 10% to build. When the house is on a mortgage payment and you factor your utility bills, overall cost of living doesn't change because the incremental mortgage payment is instantly offset essentially by removing the gas bill from the equation. Now, that said, people moving into a home that would have been living in a previous home heated by propane. Propane is very expensive. People spend thousands of dollars a year for that propane. And moving into a passive house, the home could be considered a home that is actually making money compared to a house on propane because of the level of efficiency.
Okay. And at what point do you work with architects, or are you the architect of the home if people are working with you?
We are a design build firm, but we frequently work with architects. Yes, lots of our clients, lots of our customers bring a concept created by an architect, and I think that's great. And we will take that concept and optimize the construction details and provide construction drawings so that the house can be built passive. We do include engineer stamping of ultimately our construction drawings for customers in all the Canadian provinces and United States so that people can easily receive their building permit.
Okay. Now, this is we've focused pretty much on building a new home. You did say there was retrofitting that could possibly be done, but if you were going to talk to someone about who's living in a house is not really prepared to go the new house route or do a ton of upgrades, what would you say the three big things, if we were going to move towards a more healthy environment in our house, what would the three big things be in your mind to look at for some type of an upgrade towards a more healthy home?
Well, I think the first thing that people have to do is understand what their environment is like and what it's potentially doing to your body. So we spoke about noise being one of the silent stressors, but there's a number of silent killers potentially in a house. Carbon monoxide is, of course, one. You want to make sure that you have a device to monitor. Radon is becoming a very prevalent problem in existing houses. Radon, meaning a soil gas that comes out of the ground at different rates in different municipalities. Unfortunately, radon mitigation is not into our building code, and it's become the leading cause of lung cancer, apart from smoking. So it's a big deal. You want to
Mhm.
make sure you have the radon protected, but from a mold and a toxin perspective, you want to do a test. There's a dust swab test that we've become informed with a recent client named the Hertz Me Too test. And this is ultimately a dust swab test that is mail order. You send it in, you get the results. We had a recent customer come on board. Her name was Rebecca, and she was a customer that ultimately found out while living in her house that she had the CIRS syndrome, so chronic inflammatory response syndrome, essentially. And Rebecca, a very interesting story because her and her family, they lived in an older home for a number of years, but she just had health problems, and the home didn't feel healthy. She did a bunch of research and found out that older homes can be unhealthy, the air quality and dust mitigating inside the home. She's also in a western state, so forest fires are becoming more prevalent
Mm.
for outdoor air quality, and they were dealing with that. So their research, they thought buying a new home would solve the health problem. And she's a testament that that's not the case. And they ended up buying a home that was less than 2 years old. And this is where she did the Hertz Me Too test, and she found out she had the CIRS problem, chronic inflammation. So, really doing this test to understand if you do have a big problem or not, I think is number one. If you have a problem, like the short-term solutions are going to be bringing in a number of purifiers, air purifiers to the home, and then retrofit the home. It is true you can retrofit the house to be more passive house like. Now, retrofitting a home will take a significant investment. Lots of the time, you either have to take off the outside finish or the inside finish. So for anyone that's about to renovate their home, it doesn't cost much extra to put in the proper vapor open membranes and airtight membranes. There's also a great service called the Aero Barrier product out there that is ultimately a franchise that exists in most major municipalities right across North America. They come in, they pressurize the house, and they have an airborne formula that gets pushed into all the gaps and the cracks of the home. They can't seal any large gaps, but they can seal a lot of the small ones because the two greatest things are going to make your house more healthy or give you the ability to keep it healthy will be proper airtight membranes and vapor open membranes to help with that.
Well, this has been a very fascinating conversation for my husband, who is a building codes person. I'm going to set him up in front of the computer here and have him listen to all this and see what we can do with our house here. But can people get a hold of you readily? Do you have a website? We obviously have a website, contact information. Maybe you can offer that up to us now.
For sure. So for all our podcast listeners, you want to go to our ekobuilt.com/podcast. And that's EkoBuilt for Tom, ekobuilt.com/podcast. We do have a lot of great resources there. We have a list of builder questions. If you're thinking about building a home and talking to local builders, we have a lot of questions you should be asking them to guarantee you're going to be in a healthy house. We also have access to almost 100 different designs, passive house designs that range 400 square feet right up to 6,000 square feet, even multifamily projects. And we do have an incentive for anyone that's thinking about building. There's a cash incentive that will give you a certain amount of dollars off of our passive house certified weather-tight shell envelope that we ship to you anywhere in North America.
Terrific. And social media, are you on Instagram, Facebook?
Yes, Instagram channel and YouTube, Facebook, even TikTok are other great places that you can engage with us. And we always try to respond to all the comments. We really try to be part of the education and awareness of passive home and of healthy buildings, because this is a big part of the conversation that's missing in the home building world.
Terrific. And all that will be put in the show notes. So if you haven't had a second to write everything down and you're interested in following up, you can see those in the show notes. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. It's a great conversation today.
You're welcome. Thanks again, Cathy. And anyone out there that has questions, we're all ears. Thanks again.
Perfect. Everybody, we'll talk to you next week on the Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase, here on Radio Maria Canada.